All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's tournament strategy show. Well, we'll look back at last night, and then we'll look at today's slate. We'll go game by game, talk through guys we like, and then, of course, on the pre-lock show later today, we will work through the execution. We'll talk through guys we have as leverage plays, guys who are core plays, and we'll also go game by game then and just show the small changes we make in the domination station. If you're interested in that show, link is in the description. Feel free to use promo code BDUB, BDUBB for a 10% discount there. But now that that's out the way, how are you feeling about today's slate, Brandon? How's life treating you?
I was I didn't like it too much, but then we got the news that Trae Young is out, so that definitely is going to make this a little bit more interesting and more fun to play. So that definitely helps for sure.
Yeah, I was right there with you, and I was like, okay, you're giving us a little something here. And we have some viable, cheap players on the slate, too, so we'll see how it goes. Michael Ortiz, good morning to you. I am right there with you, hoping to make some money. Yesterday was not a great day for me. Brandon, was it any better for you?
No, it's one of those nights where I just want to move on from and forget about.
Yeah, it's just like erase the tape. But
Yeah.
we'll still look at the $100,000 winning lineup. There are some interesting plays here. First up, we have Jalen Brunson. He was a play. I think the vast majority of us were over the field on him, so that wasn't really a surprise. Colin Sexton, Brandon, I did not play Sexton, but I know you had a 10% min on him, so that went well for you there. Jalen Williams, we definitely talked about him. He was one of the guys that we forced exposure to last night. Obi Toppin, did not play him. Was not on Obi Toppin at all. Did you get there, Brandon? Did you have him?
I did. I didn't have any topping.
Yeah. Vucevic was a leverage play, so that went well. TJ McConnell, I know you talked about him a lot in the chat last night, Brandon, so that made sense. We had a 15% min on him on the pre-lock show, but then once we got more news, it made sense to just force more exposure to him. Keegan Murray, I did not force exposure to. I liked Fox last night. That did not go well. But I know you played Murray a good bit, Brandon, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a 15% min on Keegan.
Yep. And then Marvin Bagley was a core play. It's one of those nights where we were on a lot of the right people, but we also missed on a lot of the ways of getting there, which happens. GG was a gigantic disappointment. But like you said, I think it's safe to move on. But Phil, you had a good night last night. Congrats, man. Glad it went well. Let's see. First things first, we have the Spurs going up against the Hornets. This is a game that I think we're going to have a little bit of exposure to tonight. We have Victor Wembanyama listed as out, but then things can never be that simple. Zach Collins is listed as questionable. I think most of us are assuming if Zach Collins plays, he'll probably be in the starting lineup, but he's been out for a little bit, and so it's hard to really trust how much he will actually play here. But with that being said, what are you doing here, Brandon? Or what's your game plan?
Yeah, I like this game quite a bit, and it should be a fairly popular one tonight. I'll start with Jeremy. He should probably be the top play on this team, if not the slate, one of the most chalkier players, which makes sense. He's down to 5,200, and he's been fairly consistent, and he can definitely pay that off in this matchup. So I love him quite a bit tonight. Other guys, I definitely not going to mind getting to. Vassell, Keldon are probably my next two priorities. I'm never excited to get to Trae, but in this matchup, I'm okay if he shows up a little bit at 5,800. And then, of course, if Zach Collins is playing, then hard not to go there. I wish he was a bit cheaper, so he's not like that. He's not like a Bagley play by any means, like last night. So 5,700, it'll be kind of tough to get like a lot of and be way over the field, especially with some of the other centers we have on the slate. But nonetheless, it's still a good spot for him. So definitely don't mind getting there. So those are kind of the main guys I'm looking at.
Yeah, and just to emphasize why this is one of the higher total games on the slate at 235. Nice spread. I don't typically love playing the Spurs or the Hornets unless they're facing each other and or the Wizards. And so that's why this is a team that we're looking to attack, and Wemby's out. So that makes it a lot more interesting. Just like you, Brandon, I plan on having a lot of exposure to this team tonight. Vassell, definitely a guy I plan on at least being around field weight on. Trey Jones, same story. Johnson is priced appropriately, 6,400, but I think there's still a little meat on the bones. He definitely has some upside, especially with him being one of the lower owned options on this team. I want to make sure I have exposure to him. We talked about Sohan. I don't even have a like on him because he's just projecting so well already in the domination station. It just shouldn't be necessary, but looking to prioritize him. Plays get a little bit more thin when it comes to Zach Collins, Barlow, Julian Champagny. They're all plays that I'm okay having in the mix. But again, I feel like they're priced pretty appropriately where I don't feel like they're must plays, especially Zach Collins, with us really just not knowing how much he will play tonight if he will actually end up playing. So we will see if Zach Collins gets ruled out. Pay attention to the news because that starting lineup will matter a lot. Thankfully, it's the first game on the slate. Anyone else you want to talk about here?
No, I will mention if Collins is out. You mentioned Barlow, but I think that makes Mamu more viable too.
Yeah, Sandro especially would be in the mix, and wouldn't shock me if he might even start. So I want to keep a close eye on that for sure. Let's see. B-Mac agreed. Barlow's worth having in the mix. What's Thomas die? No worries, man. No worries. Bronco, good to see you, man. Single entry was good for you, and 20 max almost broke even. I would take that as a win because I did not do that. So definitely not bad. Next up, we have the Hornets going up against the Spurs. For the Hornets, when it comes to injury news, we do have Brandon Miller listed as questionable. He's a starter, so that does impact some things. Nick Richards is questionable. Bryce McGowan's is questionable. So some news that we definitely need to keep an eye out for. What's your plan here, Brandon?
Definitely Miles Bridges at 7,100 is going to look really good. I'll have a good amount of him in this matchup. I mentioned last time the Hornets played, I've been waiting for the spot to go back to LaMelo. Unfortunately, tonight he's going to be fairly chalky. I was kind of hoping when I was ready to attack him, he'd be lower owned, but hard not to play him at 8,800 against the Spurs. So I like him a good amount tonight. And then glad to see the prices dropping on Rozier too. So 7,200 is definitely good for him with the upside we know he has. And then the only other guy I'm really looking at, and that's if he plays Nick Richards, especially with Wemby out. This should be a even softer matchup for him. So at 5,200, I'm definitely not going to mind getting there.
Yeah, I agree. I was hoping at least one of these Hornet players would be low owned today, but no, and I get it. I can't even be mad about it because they shouldn't be low owned today. They're all in a really good spot. LaMelo's price tag is super low, and he's been playing a lot of minutes in a good matchup. LaMelo Ball is probably my favorite play out of all of the Hornets just because his role is the most consistent, and he's going to be involved no matter what. But I agree. Terry Rozier is also a fantastic play on this slate. Miles Bridges, I like him even more if Brandon Miller actually ends up getting ruled out, but hard to be upset about playing any of these guys. Even Nick Richards I think Nick Richards is probably going to play today, but if he doesn't, then that makes a guy like PJ Washington super interesting at 5,100 as well. So this team's just in a really good spot. Hard to argue against them too much. Yeah, Phil, I think most of us are expecting Zach Collins to play, but would love it if he didn't. Just take a little bit more time off. B-Max said ball is cheap, and also if Richards is out, then you can throw darts at Mensa at 3K. You only need 21 points. Yep, at 3K you do. Nice. All right. And so, yeah, I think we just like the Hornets in general, and we like the Spurs. This is a game that I want to build around tonight.
Yep.
Next up, we have the Sixers going up against the Magic. I feel like we went from a high point to a low point. There's not as many interesting things here. Of course, Covington and Melton are out. Jaden Springer is questionable. Mo Bamba's been out for a while. What's your strat here?
Yeah, this team is not very appealing at all. Probably the only thing I'm going to do is force some Embiid, and he's only 6%. So I'd be fine with like 10 to 15% men on him just because the level he's been playing lately. Whenever Embiid is on the slate, I got to have some. So that's it for me here.
Yeah, I agree with that strategy too. I don't think Tobias Harris is the craziest play at 6,900, but he's also not a must play. He's just a viable GPP target, but there's not really much pointing towards Harris outside of just a really nice price tag. Magic typically aren't a team I like to target players against. It's also one of the lower game totals on the slate, the lowest actually. But I agree with you on Joel. Matchup proof. I'll be probably put a 5% min on him and move on from there. Not a guy I'm trying to get leverage to. I just need a little bit of exposure on. For the Magic, another team where it's really hard to get super excited about them, but there could be a few spots. Franz is still out. Gary Harris is out. Markelle Fultz and Wendell Carter Jr. have been coming off the bench, but their minutes have been slowly but surely increasing. Would be interesting to see if they start today. But what's your thoughts here? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, as a whole, this team probably won't be a priority for me, but I was keeping a couple guys in mind, and that's Wendell Carter. Like you said, he's been coming off the bench, but his price is getting lower and lower, and 4,500 for him is very tempting. Plus, like you said, there might be a chance you can get back in the starting line too. I kind of feel like he would be a better matchup against Embiid. I know neither one of him or Goga is a good matchup for Embiid, but if I had to choose, I think I would go with Wendell. So he's somebody I'm keeping in mind, and Markelle Fultz is the only other guy I'd be willing to get to. His minutes are starting to go back up. I think he played 30 or close to 30 last time. So at 4,900, he's somebody I wouldn't mind taking a shot on, but some of these other guys, it's a bit rougher to get to.
Yeah, I agree. And Sean, I agree with you too. I think Fultz could be a little sneaky here. I'm not going to say he's a leverage play for me yet, but he's viable, especially at 4,900 and playing decent minutes. You are also right too. The Spurs are risky. I don't know if it's worth talking too much about, but Pop has made it pretty clear since the beginning of this season he doesn't trust really anyone on this team outside of Victor. He hates the guard situation. That's why they've been rotating like crazy. He did bench all the starters in the second half of the last game, but I mean, the risk is there with Popovich, but the matchup is great. And so I'm still going to play the starters that we're expecting to see, but you have to realize that there is a pretty big risk there that some of these guys might fall out of the starting lineup in the second half, and some of the guys coming off the bench who we talked about, Julian, Barlow, Chetty, they could see more minutes if this game does get out of hand. But I expect this game to be closer than the Atlanta game just because of the matchup. But do you have anything else to add there, Brandon? Do you have any fears or worries?
No, that's not something I'm going to worry about.
Yeah. Fultz did play 30 minutes last game. I think that's why people were talking about him potentially starting again, but you never know. Sometimes they might want to play a guy a little heavy, then go a little bit softer in that next game. So there's still some risk involved there. It's not guaranteed we'll see another 30, but I do still like him. Next up, we have the Nuggets going up against the Celtics. For the Nuggets, we have Aaron Gordon listed as probable, but no real injury news outside of that. Do you like the Nuggets tonight?
Not really. I could get trying to force in some Jokic, but it's just hard to play him on the same slate as Embiid, and even AD is on this slate, who I like a bit more. So don't think I'll be forcing him in, and then no one else is really popping out for me here. This is just one of those games where it's better to watch versus playing DFS wise. So
yeah, I agree, especially on the Nuggets side. I want to get exposure to Jokic, but he just has not been getting there lately. We haven't seen a 60-point, 70, 80-point performance from him in a while. Doesn't mean it can't happen. I will probably do something similar to like I'm doing with Embiid just because I don't love the spot for either one of them. I'll probably just put a 5 to 10% min on both of them and just move on. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of other bigs I like more, so I have to see how that actually plays out before the pre-lock show. Outside of that, you can obviously take your shots on Murray, Porter Jr., Gordon if you want to, but up against the Celtics just isn't a spot I'm trying to force exposure to today. For the Celtics, for the first time in what feels like a long time, there's no questionable tags for any of these guys. What are you doing here?
Looks like you had the same idea as me. On this side of the ball, I'm a little more willing to attack this game. So, not sure if he would be a leverage play, but I'm definitely going to force in some exposure to Tatum. I just like him in the price range that he's been in, under 10K, and I think this is going to be a competitive game. And I usually like to try to get the studs if they're priced. They're at a good price. And then I don't even mind getting some shares of Jalen and even Derek White at 6,100. Those are kind of the only three guys I'm looking at here.
Yeah, for me, I think the only guys I like are Brown and Tatum. I don't know if I'm going to be able to force exposure to Brown on this slate, but I definitely will, like you said, force some exposure to Tatum tonight. Just given the matchup, Gordon struggled a little bit defensively so far this season, allowing a lot of points to scoring forwards. And so Tatum's in a good spot, in my opinion, and he's relatively low owned on this slate. So I'll at least be around field weight. If not, he is a potential leverage play, but that's more of a have to wait and see how the rest of the slate plays out kind of situation. Moving on, we have a game, like we mentioned, was looking very unappealing, now looking a lot more appealing. For the Hawks, Trae Young is out, Wesley Matthews is out. The rest of this, DeAndre Hunter's been out for a while now. Who are you playing here?
So I think the obvious DeJounte Murray is going to stand out big time here without Trae. So I would imagine he's going to be a core play. Bogdanovich is my next priority behind him. He's usually another guy who sees a nice boost. He's one of the primary ball handlers, so definitely want to make sure I have a good amount of him. And then guys like Sadiq Bey, Jalen Johnson. I'm even fine with Okongwu and maybe a little Capella at their price, but I'd say Bey and Jalen will definitely be priorities to where I make sure I have a decent amount, and then I'm okay with the bigs falling wherever they do.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Can't wait to see the ownership on Murray. That's going to be basically probably forcing him into being a core play. I agree. Jalen Johnson, Sadiq Bey. When you look at the usage rate increases, it's a little lackluster. There's not really anyone who sees a gigantic change in usage, but just knowing basketball and seeing this happen a few times already over the last year, we know DeJounte Murray is the guy. We know he's too cheap for this price tag of 7,500. So he's going to be a priority for me. Jalen Johnson wouldn't shock me if he's close to a core play tonight. Capella, Bey, Okongwu, even Bogdan, they're all guys I want exposure to tonight, but I don't have to be significantly over the field on them. Ideally, I'll just be a little bit closer to field weight. And my thought process there is Clint Capella, can't trust him. He's just not playing enough minutes for me to get overly excited about him at his price tag. Similar situation with Okongwu, but they are both cheap enough to make things work in my lines. So I'm not going out of my way to like limit them too much. I just don't want them showing up as core plays because of the risk that is involved there. So that's the situation for the Hawks. For the Heat, they are gifted a soft matchup against this Hawks team who has been struggling a good bit defensively here lately. From an injury news standpoint, Jaime is doubtful. Kevin Love is available, but nothing really outside of that. Do you like anyone here?
Yep, I love Bam in this spot, and I love even more that his price dropped down to 8,700. I think it was like 9K or 9,100 last game, so definitely was happy to see that. So I'll be going right back to him tonight, and then definitely don't mind taking shots on Butler and Hero again. They're just both, I feel like, priced a little too low for the upside they both have in. This is a really great matchup, so wouldn't be surprised if either one of those guys smash here. And hate mentioning Lowry, but 4K flat, and he hasn't been that great, but again, it's a decent matchup, so not a priority by any means, but if he shows up in the mix a little bit, then I'm okay with a little exposure there.
Yeah, once again, I'm with you. Lowry's one of those guys, if he starts to show up as a core play, I will limit.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I'm very comfortable with him showing up in a few lines, being slightly over the field is a decent situation. Bam Adebayo is just, I don't get the price tag, but I'm not complaining about it. Just going to play him. When it comes to Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero, like you, I like their upside. I'm going to prioritize Hero a bit here. I just like the matchup for him slightly more, but I don't think I'm going to go crazy on any of these guys, at least not right now. Just don't like the game environment as much as some of the other games. Next up, we have the Suns going up against the Pelicans. When it comes to injury news for the Suns, they have Bol out, but that's pretty much it. I know KD is usually one of those guys you like having exposure to. Is that your plan once again?
I didn't fully decide if I'm going there, but he was the one guy I was thinking about forcing in. Overall, this team just doesn't look that great in this matchup, but especially since he burned us last game, I kind of am itching to go right back to KD here because 9,200 is still a decent price for him. So he'd be the one guy I don't mind getting to here, but everybody else I probably won't have any tonight.
Yeah, I mean, KD, you literally hit the nail on the head. And for me, if you burn me on the last slate, I'm going to play you, even if it doesn't make as much sense. Sim Model doesn't love Kevin Durant, which is always concerning for me. But this season, Zion has struggled against versatile forwards. So that's enough of a reason for me to make Kevin Durant a priority. Honestly, I'll probably make him a leverage play. Might not put him on the sheet, but he'll maybe be a pre-lock show leverage play. That's just what I'm going to do. Outside of that, though, no one else is really standing out for me. But we know at this point, Beal and Booker, Nurkic all have upside. I just don't love the matchup too much for him. Game total is pretty high, though. So that's interesting.
Yep.
For the Pelicans, this team is healthy, and it's really hard for me to make any decisions when this team is healthy. But what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's definitely hard to make anyone here a priority. I'd be okay if I got some Zion shares. I still like the price on him, and I wouldn't mind any CJ either because we know Phoenix hasn't been that great against guards. I'd be willing to play some of him, but it's hard to be excited about anyone here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm okay with a little bit of exposure. I'm not leaning towards anyone in particular right now, though, so I doubt I'm going to force it, and it looks like Zion's going to be pretty chalky on this slate. If he doesn't show up naturally, I'm okay not getting there, so just one of those situations where if they show up, if the domination station likes them enough, that's fine, but not a spot I plan on forcing the issue on too much. Next up, we have the Pacers going up against the Trailblazers. We saw this last night. Everyone was questionable. As of right now, I don't see any injury news information. I see a lot of TBDs. Isaiah Jackson, TBD. Andrew Nembhard, TBD. Aaron Nesmith, TBD. Tyrese Halliburton, TBD. But it does look like Pascal Siakam will play tonight. So there's that. What are your thoughts here, Brandon? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, yet again, this team is so hard to talk about, especially with Siakam making his debut. Like, it's going to be complicated to figure them out. I will say I will be surprised if they brought Hallie back in this matchup. So kind of lean on him not playing. But if Nembhard is out again, of course, I think we can go right back to TJ. He's the same exact price. So that is one situation I'll be keeping an eye on. But these other guys with Siakam in the mix makes it unplayable for me.
Yeah, I would absolutely love if we got some of this injury news early today. I know it's asking for a lot. I asked for it yesterday. We didn't get it, but would love to get this news early just so I can guarantee I have a shit ton of TJ McConnell. But for now, I'm just going to take a wait and see approach and hope for the best. One thing that is a little frustrating to me is this Portland team is not great. In my brain, I can see Miles Turner just having a good game today just because it makes absolutely no sense. Pascal Siakam's coming. That should impact Miles Turner in a negative way, but it's just one of those things. It wouldn't shock me. So I'll probably put a 5% min on Turner just because of that. But also, it's a great spot for Siakam. We don't know how much he'll play tonight. He could be limited some sort of way, but I do plan on probably putting like a 5-10% min on him as well. I just like taking shots on these kind of spots where we don't really know how it's going to play out, but we can make some educated guesses. So a team I think we will both have exposure to, but just hard to pinpoint as of right now who it will be. For Portland, we have DeAndre Ayton listed as probable. Matisse Thybulle was not on the injury report. Sharp is out. Moses Brown is out. No real new injury news that moves the needle for me at all. What's your plan here?
Really, it's only two guys for me. Anthony Simons. He's going to look pretty good in this spot. Pacers defense is horrible. So definitely don't mind getting there. And then Malcolm Brogdon at 5,400. He's going to be a nice line filler at that price. He kind of worries me a little bit with how his minutes and performance has been, but it's the Pacers, so I'm a little more willing to get there. I was thinking about Grant as well. I wish he was a little cheaper, like closer to 6K versus 7K, but he definitely has the upside to do some damage in this spot as well. But I don't think I'll make him a priority. He's just kind of somebody I've been keeping in mind.
Yeah, it's a weird situation where I really like Simons today, but I hate his ownership. I hate how chalky he is, but the matchup's really good. So I didn't put a like or anything on him. I don't want to force the issue, but like I said, ideally he'll show up a good bit. Malcolm Brogdon makes a lot of sense. I feel the same way I do about the Spurs that I do with this Trailblazers team. These guys, the coach obviously doesn't really have a guy that he trusts too much, and they're just playing around with rotations. So I'm okay with having Brogdon here. As long as he can just do what he needs to do at 5,400, he's fine. Anyone else you want to talk about here?
Nope.
Dog's going crazy today. Next up, we have the Nets going up against the Lakers. Last game on the slate. For the Nets, looks like they are relatively healthy. Bridges is probable, but he's going to play today. I'm not really worried about that. Who do you like here?
No one really, to be honest. This team is usually hard to get to. I guess Claxton is okay. I just don't like the ownership on him. And then I guess you can mention Mikal, but I hate trying to chase his upside games. So not too excited on this side of the ball.
I mean, if you want to be silly, and if you just look at his game logs, over the last 4 games, he had 35 fantasy points against Portland, 54 against Miami, 36 against Cleveland, and then 52 against Portland. You follow the pattern, he should have scored 50 points tonight, but there's absolutely no reason to assume that will be the case. Claxton is projecting well, but there's other bigs I want to prioritize a bit more, so I'm not going to go to my way on him. I'm right there with you. As of right now, no one's standing out. For the Lakers, again, we do have LeBron James listed as questionable. Anthony Davis is listed as probable, assuming both will probably play here. Who are you looking at?
Definitely getting some AD here. He's just too good, and I think this is another spot where he can do really well. And I'm definitely going back to D'Angelo Russell. I know a lot of people have been hesitant playing him recently, but he's just playing good ball and still priced too low for how he's performing right now. So I'm definitely going to have a decent amount of him. And then per usual, no one else on this team is standing out. I don't mind some shots on LeBron, but he's not going to be a priority. And then other guys like Reeves and Prince and Vanderbilt, they're never really a priority for me.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's AD. It's D'Lo. I was one of those guys who was hesitant to play D'Angelo Russell. I think he was probably still a core play for me last slate, but I lowered exposure to him. Once you showed me who you are enough, I'll play you. It's not that hard. It doesn't take too much to convince me when you've been good and you're still cheap. So I'm fine with it. Matchup doesn't concern me. Game environment's good. So AD and D'Lo are the two guys I'm looking at making sure show up for me on this slate. Outside of that, it's a bit more hit or miss. No one else I'm really trying to force in. Darius, what's up, man? Said, how's the slate looking so far? Brandon, we just went through the whole slate. How are you feeling?
Like I said, I was kind of meh about it, but once the trade news dropped, I'm feeling much better. So overall, I'd say I like it. We got some pretty good spots to attack.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting. I want to see where ownership lands because right now, ownership is high on all of the good plays, which is, I guess, good. No, it's not good. I like it a bit more when I feel like people are missing the really good plays. Like last night, Lauri Markkanen was super obvious. I was like, hey, hopefully no one else looks at him. But today, I'm not seeing a super low owned play like that. Maybe Tatum, but it still feels a little bit more fringe. So it just feels like the way I like to play leverage plays is just not looking that strong yet. There are a lot of viable options, but nothing I can just get super pumped up for. But we'll see. Keeping a close eye out for it. FTDFS said load up on Portland to account for the late Indy news. What are your thoughts on that, Brandon?
I mean, I was already planning on having a decent amount of Simons and Brogdon, so at least I'll have them available if needed. But I don't know if I'll force anyone else in.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I like the early games a good bit on this slate. So I don't want to go too heavy on some of the later games, but like you mentioned, we'll have exposure to AD, Simons, some of the other pieces in those games. So that will give us a little bit of flex room, but ideally we just get the news. I hope. Anyway, that's everything, everyone. If you're interested, we'll see you all on the pre-lock show. Brandon, I know next week people on this early show might not see you as much, but if you are going to miss seeing Brandon, he will be on the pre-lock show a decent amount next week, or at least here and there. So that's going to be the best way of seeing Brandon. But anything else you want to add before you go away for a little bit?
No, just kind of like you mentioned, I think my main focus, like we know the good spots and they're pretty chalky. So per usual, my focus is going to be trying to find those like low owned spots to exploit. So that's kind of why I was willing to go to guys like Tatum and Durant. So that kind of be my main focus instead of those chalky, obvious plays.
Agreed. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll see you all next week. Have a good one. Good luck. Peace out.